Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be my lightsaber video. It's mostly going to be a story about how lightsabers evolved over time in the expanded universe, but I'll also talk about how I think they're going to fit that into the new movie canon. The silver lining is that they're not throwing away the engineering part about lightsabers. That part between the expanded universe and the movie canon is relatively the same. It's just the expanded universe stuff just goes into much greater detail. Most of the literature so far has dealt with the construction of lightsabers, like the componentry, the way they're designed. There isn't a whole lot about their origins, just because every time a new story comes out even further in the past, it just keeps pushing stuff back. The earliest known period that we have comics for right now is the Dawn of the Jedi series that Dark Horse did. I wasn't a huge fan of the execution of that, but I totally give them bonus points for trying to flesh out where lightsabers came from, where the original Jedi came from. To understand how lightsabers evolved, I'm going to have to do a real quick galactic history lesson on a couple different groups, starting in the Dawn of the Jedi. So that story in the comics is really more about the original schism in the Jedi Order, when it was actually pronounced Jedi, which actually combines two different words meaning mystic center. The interesting thing that story did is that it gave the creation of lightsabers to a different group of dark side force users, the Rakata. Before that, the comics had explained that the Jedi created lightsabers, and this new Dawn of the Jedi series just said, nope, it was another group before the Jedi. The origins of the Rakata go back to like 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is like super ancient history. They haven't really done a story explaining that. They just kind of loosely explained it in the Dawn of the Jedi comic. It states that they merged the dark side of the Force with their technology to make what they called Force sabers. Technically, they're not lightsabers, but I mean, yeah, they're lightsabers. I mean, look at them. The twist is that you had to use the dark side of the Force to activate them. Just the dark side. Those were introduced to the Jedi during the first Great Schism, like they had a big Force war. The Rakata were trying to take out the Jedi who had actually already fractured into dark and light sides. They were defeated, and eventually the Jedi adapted their technology to suit their own needs, most notably making versions of lightsabers that didn't require you to use the dark side of the Force. Although those types of lightsabers were still used by dark side Force users. It's at that point in history, like around 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, that you start to see different types of lightsabers evolve. Originally they were very practical, but a lot of their evolution owes to the way that they're used and the people that they're used by. The Dark Horse story, that Dawn of the Jedi story, doesn't fully explain the mechanics of how those lightsabers worked, but it was an interesting twist on the lore. It also introduced the idea of the Daibendu monks and those flying pyramids. It was really weird. It's just like, each time a new old Star Wars story comes out, it keeps predating the origins of Force users, so it's like, no, these ancient aliens developed the use of the Force. Although I think, like, the oldest known lore says that the original Force users in the galaxy merged their consciousness, like merged themselves with the Force so that they could influence its development. It makes it sound like the original architects of the galaxy became midichlorians themselves, which is just super weird, so maybe I'll explore that in another video. As I said though, that after the dark side Force users and the light side Force users parted ways and the Jedi Order was created, they developed lightsabers with external power sources so that you didn't need to use the Force to activate them, and you didn't need to be a dark side Force user. Some other variations on the use of the lightsaber include using the Force to strengthen normal melee weapons. So the Sith were actually the ones that really did this. Interesting to note because they also pioneered advancement in lightsaber technology. If there was ever an intellectual renaissance of the Force in the galaxy, the Sith Empire, like the religion the Sith Empire, was responsible for it. But for a long time, use of the lightsaber wasn't a huge thing, like it just slowly evolved over time. Like for a long time, the Sith just used Force-strengthened weapons. There was also catorsis weave too that arose, but that's more of a defensive fabrication for metals and fabrics. I know there are a lot of questions about catorsis weave itself. It's not like a 100% foolproof method for preventing lightsaber strikes. I mean, a lightsaber will still cut through anything that does not give off an equal amount or a greater amount of energy. That also has a lot to do with lightsaber crystals and construction. Over the thousands and thousands of years though, before the rise of the Sith Empire, like Jedi, started to inject their own creativity into the construction of lightsabers. So you started to see the different types of hilts that just suited each user. They even became symbols of the Jedi Order, so, constructing a lightsaber was an important rite of passage for all Padawans trying to become full journeyman Jedi. Okay, so moving forward to the rise of the Sith Empire and the Renaissance in the Force, they essentially developed new technology that pushed forward advancements in lightsabers as well as all uses of the Force. That really didn't start happening till around 18,000 years after the Dawn of the Jedi series. So that was actually there was a long period between the end of the Dawn of the Jedi and the rise of the Sith Empire. Like the original Jedi, they explored all academic disciplines of the Force, from mysticism to alchemy, biology, technology, and pure science. If you were capable of surviving in that environment, it was probably like the most exciting time to live in galactic history. They were also really bad people, so odds are you'd be tortured to death in the name of progress. But they did contribute to like the biggest leaps forward in Force technology. So they developed lightsabers with internal power sources that didn't need power packs connected to them. They introduced those to the Jedi during the Great Hyperspace War. I mean, obviously they were fighting the Jedi, but after they were defeated, the Jedi adapted the new technology to their lightsabers. The comics credit Exar Kun as being the first Dark Jedi to wield a double-bladed lightsaber, but to be fair, he got the design from an ancient Sith holocron, so technically somebody else thought of it first. The reason you don't see everyone using one is, one, because they're really hard to wield, and two, they require like so many extra components that are really rare and hard to find that it just makes it almost impossible to build one. The lightsaber itself, just like as an engineering marvel, is a beam of pure plasma contained by a Force containment field. The crystal in the hilt is like the heart of the lightsaber. It's what focuses the beam and gives it its properties. People can mix and match a lot of components to suit their needs, depending on what their personal style is. Just from a scientific perspective, plasma itself is one of the fundamental states of matter, so there are different degrees of plasma density, just implying that you could theoretically build lightsabers that are stronger or have stronger blades than others depending on the components you use. Thus, the crystal becomes the most important part. There are hundreds of different types of crystals that the EU has talked about. Some of the most common ones are Luxem crystals, Adegan, Karuska, Lignin, and then there are synthetically grown crystals. The Sith actually believed that their synthetic crystals were superior to the natural crystals used by the Jedi, but just as a rule of thumb, the more rare the crystal you use is, the more powerful it is. Usually when you hear about like the really rare kinds of crystals though, it's from like the really famous characters or really legendary figures. A lot of times what'll happen is if there's like a super powerful crystal, it'll either be passed down as the lightsaber itself, or if for some reason the original user's lightsaber is taken apart, the crystal will be passed down. The number of crystals that you use to make a lightsaber also influences properties quite a bit, and also just depend on what kind of lightsaber you're building. So for instance, you start out with like the most primitive kinds of lightsabers. They use one crystal, they're fixed length, there's nothing super special about them. You step it up to 2 crystals and you can give the blade different properties. And then if you're building like a double-bladed lightsaber, it can take up to 4 crystals. Like Darth Maul's lightsaber, for instance, took 4 synthetic Sith crystals. It doesn't necessarily make it more powerful than another blade, it just gives it a lot of extra properties. And a lot of those other unique properties come from the rarity of the crystals. Like for instance, some crystals can bind lightsabers to certain users, like make it so only the person who built the lightsaber can use it. Other crystals can make it so that you can only activate them with the use of the Force, whether the light side or the dark side. These are some of the things that I think that the new movie canon is going to simplify. Like the movies will explain why you need to use crystals to build lightsabers, but it's going to get rid of a lot of the technicalities. I'm really hoping we get to see this character, this dark side Force user, build that blade. Based on some of the rumors I've heard about Andy Serkis's character, we will get like a big explainer for the history of the galaxy and the history of the Force. I'm really hoping that isn't like a voiceover, but if it's Andy Serkis, I'll totally give him a pass. He can voice over anything. It's just that sometimes whenever movies do that, whenever they do the big voiceover, it ends up hurting the movie more than it helps. Another cool thing that I think the new movie trilogy is going to explore a little bit better is the idea, like the distinction between the unifying Force and the living Force. So the movie's called The Force Awakens. Obviously that's a metaphor for the characters learning about the dark side and the light side of the Force. I also think that it's going to explore the distinction between the more organic side of the Force and the more cosmic side. I think I've talked about it in one of my earlier videos, but think of this new trilogy as being movies about the Force itself as much as it's about these new characters. I mean, characters are always going to be the most important thing, but the Force is such a point of fascination and study that, why wouldn't you make movies about it? Who gives a shit about galactic politics? If you're looking for some really good resources on lightsaber history, like stories that go into the details of lightsaber construction and their history, the best comics to start with are the Dawn of the Jedi, which, the story isn't great, but some of the ideas they have are really good. And then pretty much all of Tales of the Jedi. That's actually an anthology with several story arcs. It starts out with the rise of Exar Kun and then jumps all the way back in time to the Golden Age of the Sith, but it's one of my favorite runs of Star Wars comics ever. Just to talk a little bit more about the new movie canon, I think, most of the changes that they're going to make, or omissions, are just in the name of simplicity, just so that people who have never read a Star Wars comic can understand what's going on. It's also important to remember that the original movies and the prequels are all still canon, and those actually did flesh out a lot of the different hilt designs and some of the lightsaber technology itself. We don't really know how many Jedi are going to be featured in this first one in Episode 7, but I am looking forward to some cool new lightsaber designs. Technically, this cross saber here is based on a pre-existing design, so you can't really call it new, but we haven't seen it on screen in a Star Wars movie, so it's new to the movies. This object here on Rey's Landspeeder actually looks mysteriously like the hilt of Darth Maul's lightsaber too. It might just be an Easter egg, but I will flip a little bit if it's actually a lightsaber. If you saw the deleted scenes from the original Star Wars trilogy, there was actually this cool scene in Return of the Jedi, or was meant to be in Return of the Jedi, where Luke builds his lightsaber, like the one that he has, the green lightsaber. That's what I'm hoping that they include that kind of scene in Episode 7. It was like one of the coolest deleted scenes ever in the history of the fandom. I understand why George Lucas might have wanted to cut it out for time, but it's just a bummer that they waited so long till the special editions to release it. It feels like something that would be really high on the list of things that they want to include in the new trilogy. Just like moments, like, hey, let's have someone build a lightsaber. That would be freaking badass. So right now I'm trying to figure out what my 2015 bonus schedule is, so if you have any requests for special Star Wars videos on the movies or anything else, just leave your requests in the comments. What you'll probably see is me do more video series, like a series of 8 or 9 videos in a row about a specific topic, in addition to the really timely newsy or trailer bonus videos. Just imagine me doing 8 or 9 videos in a row on the history of the Star Wars galaxy or the history of the Force, and just post one of those every week. I'll still be doing reaction videos and breakdowns whenever Lucasfilm posts a trailer or there's new information on the movies. So you just see a mixture of those two types of videos. But just in general, I want to do more video series. So be sure to subscribe to get everything and just let me know what you want my first video series to be about. And yes, I will be doing the exact same thing for Game of Thrones, the Marvel videos I do, the DC videos, any of the other big things that I can handle. I am working on a video for all the big things in 2015 that I'm looking forward to the most, so I'll try and post that in the next couple of days. I'll explain what my schedule is going to be for posting videos and that. Right now, click here to learn more about the Episode 7 characters, and click here to learn more about the Han Solo spin-off movie rumors. Thank you so much for watching, so let's all high five. I will see you guys tomorrow.